I have stories of being in junior high and bringing toothpicks that were saturated with mint extract and selling them at my locker after lunch. I'm just like finding ways to meet demand and make a little money. And, and like I've been doing this forever. I just didn't really realize that's what it was.
Welcome back. This is a podcast about entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Alan Bennett. And today's guest, we have Brad Alexander, and we are going to have a discussion about what it's like to live as an entrepreneur, all the fun, the challenges, the obstacles, left turns, right turns. Yeah, welcome to the show, Brad.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Alan. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk and be here.
Yeah. All right. So first thing I've got to ask, this is for those that are watching this and not listening to it, right above your head is a picture of Doc Holliday, right? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. There's got to be a story there.
Yeah. Well, the short story is, Tombstone has been one of my favorite movies forever. And just actually about a year ago, my wife and I've got three boys, teenage-ish age, and they were out somewhere, and I forget, some store. They had like all this memorabilia that had been autographed that you could like purchase, for some fundraiser that they saw, and so it's like signed by Val Kilmer as and as Doc Holliday, and so they just kind of out of surprise bought it for me. And we're planning to give it to me, I think, for Christmas, but then she just kind of couldn't wait. And so, yeah, I had there's another picture back there that's kind of one of these scenic areas of Arkansas. And I was like, man, this will fit right next to it. And it usually does what it just did. Like people that kind of know what it is, they're like, oh, what's that about? Other people that don't know what it is, they don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it sometimes leads to people trying to quote the movie and all that. But anyway, so yeah, it's just I have this little office. I'm meeting with people all the time, and I've tried at least make the background somewhat interesting for them. So at least when they get bored of listening to me, they can dart their eyes around and wonder what the heck is going on back there. So
yeah,
a good question. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
you're not the first to ask. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my background is blurred because my wife strongly insisted that I do that because some people don't want to see the dead things on the wall behind it. Yeah, so I'm a duck hunter.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so my background's blurred for those that are watching. Yeah. And so like, well, okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship.
Sure.
Where did the bug hit you? Tell me a little bit about your background. Have you always been an entrepreneur, or what's your story?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I would say, I think I found out about 3 years ago that I've always been one, but I didn't know that's what it was. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I actually cut a lot of my teeth my early work years doing various forms of like ministry work, like in churches or with college students, or things even over like in Asia and other places.
Yeah.
And so with that world comes a lot of just, you got to start something up, and you got to kind of think through things and problem solve and figure out creative solutions to get around logistics problems or finance problems, or trying to, I don't know if you ever tried to get a bunch of volunteers to get excited about something, to go do something, and then to actually show up on time and be there and be happy that they're there. And then they're not getting paid to do it, And so all that stuff I've been, in a sense, doing for 15 plus years in some capacity. And so there's always this sort of like, what's next? What are we thinking of? What's coming down the hill or coming down the road that we need to be paying attention to, and just excitedly thinking about that stuff. And so when that shifted for me into the marketplace about 7 years ago, I've quickly realized that the skill set and that desire to just, I want to build something. We need to create something. And even just the honest thought of like, yeah, I could probably figure this out, which is, to a lot of people seems crazy. If you're not in that world, if you haven't met another entrepreneur, if you're just kind of I love my job, I'm an employee, you're the idea of like, well, I don't know where my money's going to come from. I'm not really sure how I'm going to pay rent next month, and I have mouths to feed, but I'll probably figure it out. Like that's kind of outlandish, that amount of risk. And so I just realized that I've kind of operated that way for years. That's always been in me. Even, I mean, goodness gracious, I have stories of being in junior high and bringing toothpicks that were saturated with mint extract and selling them at my locker after lunch. And then they stopped. Then I couldn't do that. The teachers wouldn't let me do it. So I started buying packs of gum at Sam's and bringing them and selling for a quarter a piece. And, it just kind of all that stuff where I'm just like finding ways to meet demand and make a little money. And, and like, I've been doing this forever. I just didn't really realize that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the minted spicy toothpicks. Yeah. Wow. You're dating yourself there, Brad.
Yeah. Well, they were homemade, and so that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So, and as far as like your growing up, did you come from a family of entrepreneurs?
Yeah. I would say kind of, yeah. I mean, I would say yes. In my childhood, my parents both were school teachers. Like that was their job. They taught for years, but I'm the youngest of three kids, and before I kind of came around, my parents are like small town Iowa farm folks, and then on a whim, they like threw a dart at a map and it landed in this place in Arkansas, and they knew somebody there, and they were tired of cold weather, so they moved down and they bought the local motel and then ran it and then grew it up and then sold it, and kind of had this like business flip success for a while. And then it was really my dad is where it came from. And then he ended up trying to invest in like a trucking company, and it's a long story, but he kind of got cheated out of some money, kind of lost that income, and then got sick with this illness that he ended up getting that put him out for about a year. And so for a while though, he was always kind of trying to, what's the next business thing? He had a concrete company, he had a pool installation company, he had all these things that he was kind of trying and doing, and they were making ends meet. But eventually, I think the ups and downs, and then when he got sick, he just went to school teaching. So all it just for some stability. And so, but that was all part of, always, every time I was thinking about some idea as a kid, he was always into it. Oh yeah, you could do this, maybe that, and so,
yeah.
And then even when I started a business, and my wife and I, he's passed since, but when my wife and I were doing business stuff before then, he was, of all the family members, like, how's that work? And how can you do this? And he was always curious about it. And
yeah,
kind of had that bug. And he would perpetually say, I just don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. He was 70 years old and would say that. So it was definitely in there, for sure. But I'm the only one of the family that caught it. My brothers and sisters did not. And so, anyway, so it was there, but not everybody is.
Yeah. So as far as what you do now, when you decided to do that, so share with the audience what it is that you're currently doing. What do you do?
Yeah. So I run like a small marketing consultancy. That's the best way to say it. It's, a lot of great leaders know they need to do marketing, but instead of doing things consistently, on purpose, they really do it in like fits and spurts and just get frustrated. And so we come in and help them really figure out strategically what to do and how to do it. And so they can really keep things focused, just help them get more leads and more sales. And so it's a lot of strategy, a little bit of messaging. I don't know if anybody that's listening to this is familiar with StoryBrand. It's a messaging framework. I'm a certified guide. I've been certified with them for 6+ years. And so a lot of what do we need to do or what do we need to say, we could just help businesses figure that stuff out and put that together. So, but yeah, making that jump into that was, it was a whole career pivot for me, from like doing ministry work into now I'm going to be a marketing person, for sure. There's a different angle.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit, because when I left the corporate world to start my first business back in 2000, and there were lots of sleepless nights. I was sleepless with not on anxiety, but excitement. My wife was sleepless on anxiety. So share with your journey
Yeah.
on leading, like, I'm going to make this decision. I've made this decision. Talk through that a little bit. What is that like?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish I could say that it was like, man, okay, I think we're going to start this company and I'm going to leave this ministry job and let's go out. For me, initially it was, we don't have any money, so I need to make some money. Um, because too long a story to get into now, but I was transitioning out of this role at this church and I was planning to jump in at a different one. And then just for a lot of reasons, like nothing ever really landed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just got to a place of I wasn't getting paid. And my wife had like a side thing that we had started. And I was like, I'm good at this. I did a lot of communications part of my job anyway. And I was like, I can do this. Let's ramp up your business. And then I think I could help other people do this, but who wants to pay a pastor to market their business? You know, like that's nobody that making that connection was the hurdle for me. And so there was, we definitely about 6 to 8 months of uh, choosing to make some investments in some education and some things that would help just legitimize my capabilities to people, and then also to vet it out and like meet with friends and colleagues and people like, hey, I think where could I help you out? What could I do? I have this offer. I'm trying to figure out packages, all that kind of stuff. But as weird as it was, at the time, it seemed it was a safer bet to try to bet on ourselves than it was to try to hustle and just find a job somewhere and hope it works out, for a little bit, I was applying to other places just, well, I need some money in the meantime. Let's see what happens. And, but, anybody that's trying to get a job, that's a hard career pivot and you don't know anybody in the industry, that's a really hard thing to happen quickly. And so, and so it was a lot of, questioning yourself. Am I an idiot? What am I doing with my life? Am I going to regret this? But also like, some of that excitement, but I really believe that I've got some value here. I think there's some problems I can really help people with. I like this kind of work. And will people pay for this service or this product? How much will they pay? How much should we charge? I mean, you get all wrapped up in that stuff. And for me, because I'm more of a professional service industry, as opposed to like, I found this cool widget that I'm going to sell or make this product. It's a different approach than, I'm not like trying to get stuff manufactured and see if people like it. It's more like, it really is very personal. Like, people trust me? Do they,
Right.
Want my help? And so that's a very vulnerable spot to be in for sure. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some, a lot of late nights trying to finish things or put things together, and a lot of empty days where I'm working, but I'm not working. If you're an entrepreneur, you go to work, but with no guarantee that you're making money that day because you're running the business, and so, but you still need to do it as opposed to clocking in and clocking out, and so, yeah, so, I mean, there was a rough up and down for a while of getting some money and then not having some and, kind of slowly inching that up. But there was a point in which, I mean, my wife was just very honest and like, listen, like we have to put a deadline on this because like you're good at what you're doing, but we don't know if you're good at running your own business. And those aren't the same thing. And just because you have the skill doesn't mean you know how to run a business. And not like pointing at me, but just like, this is a reality that we're realizing right now. So we need to put a time stamp on this with like when, kind of a fish or cut bait scenario.
Yeah.
Which we did. And thankfully, it worked out. I mean, I'm glad it has been very good since that point. But, a lot of those hard conversations that becoming an entrepreneur and jumping out and starting your own thing, it doesn't just turn into a paycheck. It gets very personal.
Yeah. So when you do that, I don't know, did you pick like, okay, by December 1st, we have to, was there a specific date that you picked?
Yeah. I think we were having a conversation in like, it was like January, February after about it. I mean, I think I'd been at it for about 10 months and then it was like the following year, it was like the new year, we were looking ahead of things and I had enough things to kind of see how I'd been trending so far, where there was traction, where there wasn't traction with people, with potential leads and clients and this stuff. And so, it's kind of like a dollar amount. It was like, I need to have this much kind of on the books monthly coming in, and projected to be coming in for several months after that. I think we picked sometime in October, so about 10 months out. It wasn't like 2 months. It was something
Right.
that was like, hey, we understand this takes time, but
Yeah. A little bit of a runway.
yeah. And so, yeah, it was like, I think we were like October 15th or whatever year it was. And we're going to, we'll see where it is. And I mean, with some grace, if it was like $5 off, we're like, what?
Right. Yeah.
I'm saying, like, you need to be at this many, you need to be making, I don't even remember what it was, $5,000 or $6,000 a month is actually coming in, on a regular basis. And, because if it's just not there, if it's just kind of hodgepodge and hit fits and spurts of money, then, we have to have some predictability. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was, man, I didn't like that conversation, but it needed to be had.
Yeah. Creates a sense of urgency when you put a timestamp to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So so now that let's kind of live through that moment for just a minute. So now you're committed to it. Did you ever have any hesitation that you wouldn't, sur- this business wouldn't survive, or tell me about that?
Um, I mean, I, if I'm honest, I think in my gut, I was always like this because I just am bent that way. Like, this is going to pan out. This is going to work
Yeah.
out. Um, like, I don't think I ever had like a very core, like, I don't know this. It was more like, how long is it going to take?
Right.
I haven't quite figured it out yet. And so, I mean, that's just my line, but man, Alan, I'm just, unfortunately, maybe to some people, like, that's just how I'm wired. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's positive, but it, frustrates my my wife a lot. Like, yeah, it's fine. You're
Yeah. I'm married
because
to one like
sometimes,
that too. I
yeah,
get
'cause
it.
sometimes it's not, and that's why she's there. And 'cause there's
Yeah.
been plenty of things about, or, things I don't think are going to break, or things I don't think are going to break, pan out,
Yeah.
like, go bad, and they don't work out, just with kids and family, other things.
Yeah.
But
So what
yeah,
we're talking
but
about is
there was definitely some. Again, it's very much like, I think I can do this, but do I have what it takes to really get there when I need to get there? I think that was more the question of, can I pull it off? Do you have what it takes to figure this out? Um, I know very much that was the question. Like, I think, again, core belief was like, I think I could do this, but it was more like, can you do it this fast?
yeah.
Uh, and I was not sure about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So for everybody that's listening, what we're discussing now is, I don't know if you've read the book Oz Principle, but we're talking about the mindset, the victor mindset.
Mm.
And that's what I'm hearing in this story is your mindset was there for it to work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think it came out again when I transitioned off this ministry job, and it was, now I'm starting a business. Like, we had several months in that transition where it's like, I didn't have a paycheck. We're getting food stamp help from the government. My kids are on state insurance. Thank goodness our house was, like, we didn't have to leave anything, turn anything off. We were just barely getting by the bills.
Yeah.
And so, we were beyond that a little bit, but not too far away from it. So I think it was like, I was kind of close enough to the fire to be like, the only way I have to look is to go forward.
Yes.
And one of my other favorite movies is Cinderella Man,
Oh yeah.
boxing movie. And, he goes through the Great Depression. He's this fighter and gets hurt, and kind of, loses his luster. Then he kind of comes back into it, like, kind of better than ever. And people are like, where's that come from? And he's like, I know what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for milk. I'm fighting for food. And so there's just a difference of the
Yeah.
purpose that was there, that I was just kind of, it wasn't just like, play around with this and figure it out. It was like, I got to feed my family, and I got to do this. And so, yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers it.
No, you did. Yeah, no, absolutely. That you fed the fire on that. So mindset and a clear vision and a mission. That's the theme that I'm
Yeah.
hearing in
Yeah.
your story. And that's, for entrepreneurship, I don't talk to many successful entrepreneurs that ever say, "Oh, I just thought I'd try it for a little while," right? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the first major win and what led up to it. Now you don't have to share details, but let's
Sure.
hear about the journey of it, as far as
Yeah.
what led up to it, how did it all play out, and then the backside of that story. Talk about that.
Yeah. Um, so I'll say I'm trying, there's like two I could point to. I'm trying to figure out which one I think would be I think the one that probably would be the better one to talk about. So it was kind of in this, it was the one that really got over the hump of that deadline scenario.
Yeah.
And then I guess this time we're still living, I'm in Arkansas now, but we're living in a suburb of North Dallas. So we're still living there and wanted to move and get out of there and just kind of, hey, let's restart somewhere, all that kind of stuff.
Good.
And um, I had been working with a handful of clients and people through this messaging framework, the story brand framework, and kind of helping them think through stuff from their website and whatever else. And I just had there's kind of this project work here and there. And then I had interacted with somebody who had read the stuff, read the book, and was trying to figure it out. And we were just kind of there's this I can't too hard to explain. There's this platform where you can kind of back in the day where you could go and ask questions about the framework for your business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just on there answering his questions, not pitching him anything, just kind of, yeah, you might think this, or here's how you do it. And then like eventually, like he finds my email and he just contacts me directly and said, hey, you're like the first person that was helping me with this. That wasn't trying to like sell me your services. And which makes me want to talk to you about hiring you. And I was like, okay, well, I appreciate that. So, and so that turned into, hey, will you come out here for a full day with our team and walk us through this stuff? We got a bunch of marketing stuff we're trying to figure out, which I'd done like a couple hours here and some virtual meetings, but not like, hey, here's the whole C-suite, let's come do this. And so that was a first major jump of like, okay, there's credibility here, there's trust here. And then that turned into, hey, we need to apply this to a massive website project and a whole bunch of email things and some lead generating documents. And we just need some help doing that. Can you come work with us for like the next, X amount of months and do this? And that the proposal and then the deal for that was one, it was about 8 months of like consistent money that was already coming in. And it was significant enough of a project that we had predictable income at this point. And it was like, okay, this is what this is going to be. This is what this should be like, and this is a taste of how this can look. And then that's what really gave us the freedom to step back financially, be like, okay, great. We could actually sell and move our house and somebody might actually lend us money, and all that stuff, because we have a paycheck. And so, so leading up to it was, I would, for me, trying to, again, because I'm in the service area of like a professional service consultant kind of business, so just trying to add value and be helpful before I'm trying to, even if it's for free, in some way, and just, hey, these are the kind of people I can help. If I can help them think through it, that's great. And when it makes sense, we'll talk about money. But for right now, they're just trying to get some questions answered. And so I was just doing that actively, which led to that. And I was doing that at other places too, but at least this dynamic, it led to that. And then in the middle of it, it was, I kind of jaw-droppingly in disbelief. I was like, this just kind of fell into my lap. It wasn't like some deal that I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. It was like very quick. Hey, come out here, which was already a significant project, just to come for a day with their team and do the whole thing. And then very shortly after, all right, we know all this done. Will you just do it? Can you, and some people do it. And we're like, oh, and the money I threw out as proposal was more than I'd charged for anything ever. Yeah, sounds great. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I didn't know this could work.
They said yes.
Yeah. And so it was, very a wash of relief and validation,
Yes.
okay, yeah, I do know what I'm doing. I'm not crazy, and this is, you can now have a little breathing room to kind of help build things out. So you're just trying to get business all the time.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
So as you're going through this journey, let's live a moment in mentorship.
Yep.
So as you're going through all of this, I know in my past I've had people that I defined as mentors. They knew they were my mentor. I said, we had this open relationship about mentorship, and then I had others that I would lean on. They might have figured out that they were a mentor to me,
Right.
but maybe not. I don't know. And especially early on in entrepreneurship, they were critical, in
Yep.
that process. Did you have some mentor, or do you have mentors that you lean
Yeah.
on?
Yeah. Great question. I initially there wasn't like um I don't think I had anybody that was like personally that I was talking to that was helping me with I had some friends and colleagues that had kind of like they ran a business or they kind of had
Hmm.
their own business, and so I could ask questions about just a few things like, hey, how do I set up my LLC, and how do I, just
Hmm.
things that were just like that they were, oh yeah, you can do this. It's pretty simple and this and that. Just a lot of that admin stuff that,
Yeah.
you know, again, you sign up to start a business. There's not some degree for that. There's, that it's just, you're supposed to know. No, you're supposed to pay taxes on that. Oh, okay. I didn't know that, or just,
Oh, that.
yeah, yeah, that stuff. And so, but within actually this, part of me making a big jump and it was investing in this certification from this marketing framework. And I guess I've had other friends of mine that have been in these kind of professional organizations that are like, yeah, they kind of, I don't know, but like evidently this one is really, really, really high quality. And it's the only one had been a part of at the time. But just the generosity of the entire populace of people who are all kind of speaking the same language and not doing the exact same thing, but kind of coming from the same approach of the
Yeah.
philosophy of marketing and things. And there's people that were all over the map of their journey of their business. There's people like me who are literally starting their own thing from scratch and have trying to figure things out. People who had been doing this stuff for 10 years and this is just something they were adding into it. But like templates for this and a whatever for this and a idea for this, or how did you tackle this, or what should we do on this? And just
Right.
the generosity, the community was huge. And then from that, there's some people it was all kind of online via Slack, that
Mhm.
tool. There's a lot of
Yeah.
communication there. But then from that, there'd be some people that I seemed to kind of click with their answers more. And then I reached out to them and tapped them and I was like, hey, can I pay you like $100 to spend a couple hours with me on a call? I just got a bunch of questions, sure, and you don't have to pay me, whatever, but they're just, yeah, they just, I mean, very open handed.
Mm.
Here's how I did this. Here's what I could hear you do. And here's some ideas, or maybe you just need this, or, just a lot of that pragmatic, tactical stuff. Um, so that was for sure. Like the first 2 or 3 years was a lot of that. The community does a lot of here's education and here's helpful people, and we're all kind of helping each other out, which is phenomenal. Since then, I don't have. I mean, I've got a regular group of those folks, and then some friends of mine locally that we're all kind of running our own business. We all have families. We're all involved in a church in some way, and so those three kind of weird things that all play together that we're
Mhm.
all constantly wrestling with. We meet and talk about things, and we're all different levels of revenue and sizes of businesses and that things. And so
Yeah.
there's that there, but otherwise, most of my mentorship, if you will, has been through just trying to select some certain authors or kind of leaders in the area that, man, I like the way they think, and I just want to read everything they have. And
Yeah.
um, that's probably where I've gotten most of that kind of since then.
Yeah. So as your business has evolved, the mentoring requirement that you need is also it's
Yeah.
also evolved.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing the theme of innovation.
Right.
As you grow, we have to not necessarily reinvent, we have to innovate as to
Right.
how things work. So share that of course, technology is always changing and things like that, but share your journey of where innovation is and how you've been able to pivot through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for me, it's kind of double sided. It's been, okay, what am I doing that I hate? And so how can I stop doing that?
Yeah.
That's one element of it. And then another part of it is, what does it seem like now that we're really engaged with these clients, that there's just stuff that we're not really doing with for them and they're not doing for themselves, but it seems like would really be beneficial for them. And with that, like, are there things that we can step in that we can figure out how to do or start offering? And then the other side of it is just like, man, I love working with these people. I don't want them to go away. How can I get them to pay me more money to help them make more money? And so, like, what makes sense for that? And so for my, those are kind of probably been the three things that I'll find myself thinking through in that. And so, like, for example, well, so anyway, so the innovation for me, even though I'm in the marketing world, it's not so much like what's the kind of tactical tool we use, or am I using AI or not, or whatever else. It's more, again, from the service orientation, the packages that we're trying to put together, the things we're trying to help people do with their business has shifted. And so the innovation for me, like, we first started out, it was basically, I would do other work, but I was selling myself as a, hey, we're going to get you a beautiful website and we're going to write all the words for you. Because those, usually you go hire a web designer and they're like, what do you want to say? And as a business owner, you're like, I don't know. And so we're like, we'll do that part too. And it will be awesome. And so that's kind of where we started. But then I got tired of managing websites because little bugs come up and you get 5 websites. It's not a big deal. You get like 30 or 40 or more, all those little things happen. And then you got to hire somebody just to take care of those things. And so the innovation for me was like, that's not interesting. That's something else somebody else could do. And I'm not the best at that. And so we kind of started shutting that part of the business down and leaning more into, but do you have somebody helping you plan things on a quarterly basis? Are you actually thinking through your customer journey and kind of where people are at in that, and how to really think through creative ways to meet them in those spots? Okay. And so from trying to take more of an advisor role, and then when we can supplement, we will, but for the services. So, but the question in innovation is more like, okay, what do I hate doing that we're doing? How can I stop doing that but still get paid? And then from the flip side, what if we love these clients? How can we keep their relationship and make sense for them to keep paying us money for things that are making them even more money? And so that's kind of, and so if it's a new framework, is there a new tool I got to get certified in? Do I need to figure out how to use Chat GPT or not? Do I need to, whatever it is, trying to be ahead of them in a good way, because they're not experts at that stuff, because they're experts at their products and service like they should be. And so can we kind of continue to be a leader for them in that, and a helpful resource?
Right. Yeah. So we're talking about the difference between high value and low value task, or high value, low value clients.
Yeah.
The old Pareto's law, 80-20, that's the language that we're speaking. And so let's talk about, in that same vein as this 80-20 high value, low value, as you're evolving your business, did you set some time aside, like block your calendar to kind of reevaluate? How'd that work?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I wish I could say it's like, or what I do. I wish I could say, you know what, every 3 months on the Friday of the 3rd month, do this from 9 to 12.
It sounds pretty, doesn't it?
Right. And so they put it in the books, that's how you're supposed to do it. But it's more of a, I value it and I do it. And then, I've got a decent handle on my schedule, but I'll be like, oh my gosh, okay, I need to just block off some days to think about this. And so, I make that, I do fight for that time. It's not this week, every month, or that, I do have blocks of time throughout the week where I'm making sure that I don't have anything on my calendar.
Yeah.
So that I just at least have the freedom to do some of that stuff. But there's definitely weeks where I'm doing a lot more of that, and then some months where I'm not doing any of that, because we're just kind of in a good flow and a good rhythm. Right. But yeah, certainly, like, kind of end of the year, beginning of the year, I'm normally contemplative during that time. And like a lot of us are thinking, okay, what was good last year? What we need to do this year? But I've also found, like, this time of year too, is that natural spot for that because my work weeks are weird with kids at home from school and people are traveling for vacations and clients and us. You're just not as everybody's not as present as they are, and so it's kind of natural to be like, all right, I'm gonna sit here and go do this for a few hours today and just think about this and kind of evaluate what's going on. Because I'm not needed,
Yeah.
because everybody else is offline. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's funny. I work from home every time I get on these podcasts, my dogs are in here. And
yeah,
I'm like, I'm so glad that UPS doesn't ring the doorbell anymore. They just
right,
leave the package, take a picture, and they leave because
yeah,
if that it'd be a train wreck around here. Yeah.
yeah,
So you can, and working from home, you can get distracted just as easily as you can if you're not working from home. It's tough.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And you can during the summer, especially, I'm definitely leaving more than I usually do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go, yeah, they're all boys in kind of teenage years right now, so they're not up and at them at 8 in the mornings, So I disappear early and come back later. Nobody's like, "Where's Dad?" It's like we're asleep anyway, and so some of that. But yeah, it's a you got to fight for it. You do have to plan it out, and um, but yeah, time blocking I believe heavily in, even if it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, these 3 hours I think it's Mike McAllowitz and Clockwork. He's got a book that
Hmm.
just talks about operating that stuff, and he just 80% of your work week of the team's work week needs to be doing the things that you're sold to people.
Yeah.
And so, if you're the owner and you have two or three people on your team or five people on your team, the average of that needs to be 80%. You as the owner hopefully aren't doing all that unless you're a solopreneur, then you have to,
Right.
and so, but you need to have some design times. That's what he calls it, some thinking time.
Yeah.
And so, I've definitely made it a habit to, if nothing else, don't cram my day full of Zoom meetings because then I can't think about stuff or I can't write if I have to write or plan if I have to plan. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, anyway, but
Yes. So let's, as we wind down our conversation, this is the fun part. This is one of my most favorite questions about entrepreneurship. Let's talk a little bit about misconceptions of small
mm,
business ownership. Right?
yeah.
Since we're talking about time management.
Yes, misconceptions. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like everybody's like, oh man, it must be so nice. It's so yeah, you're your own boss and you're all that kind of stuff. And again, I wouldn't trade it for the world. There was a season I jumped in as a substitute project manager for a friend of mine who had like a gap. He was hiring, they were on fire, and I was like, hey, I'll come work. I'll add it into my work week for 3 months. I can help you out. And I loved him. I loved the company. I hated it because it was just like I had to be on somebody else's schedule, and it wasn't like it was more work. It was just like I didn't decide when I was meeting. I have to be at a meeting, and it frustrated me so bad. And so I was like, okay, this is it. This is who I am. I'm realizing this anyway. But yeah, the misconception that it's just so easy. You don't ever, especially nowadays, sadly, all these online guru is just passive income, and there's no such thing as passive income. There's just not. Like if it's coming in easily, it's because you did a heck of a lot of work to get it there, and
Yeah.
you're maintaining it. But it's not like you're going to click two buttons, put some digital book online, and you're going to make millions of dollars. It's just, it's just a lie. And so, yeah, the misconception that money just flows in, that being your own boss is the best thing in the world. It is, but sometimes you also have a terrible boss, and it's yourself.
He's pretty demanding,
He
isn't
makes you
he?
work too much, or he makes you worry too much about the things you're delivering. It's always on you about money. He never lets you stop thinking about the stuff you're selling. And so I'm my own boss, but sometimes I'm a bad boss, um, and I think too, like I think the other thing that just comically every time somebody makes the jump or they realize they're in that spot, they're like, "Oh wait, what about health insurance?"
Oh yeah.
Like that's it. That is the thing that will keep most people from jumping. It's like I don't know how I'm gonna have health insurance because I mean, it's a legit thing, and
Yeah.
it's a you realize the underbelly of the American insurance world and how messed up it is when you don't just have it given to you by your job. And it's hard and it's frustrating and it's an expense that you aren't used to having to pay for,
Yeah.
or it's always surprising at how expensive it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So last question. And this is not designed to be a trick.
No, bring it on.
If you, if you could go back to yourself
Yeah.
and go back in time and be in your ear about something when you first started out, knowing what you know now, what would be the first thing that you might say to yourself?
Learn how to manage your money. That's just always been for me something that I'm just a natural spender. I mean, even in my marriage, like it's always, hey, let's buy this. And my wife's like, we should save. I mean, that's just my tendency anyway. But again, the administrative part of running your business, there's a cash flow reality to it. It's just different than just somebody doesn't just pay you money and then you get to use all that money. It doesn't matter even if you're a solopreneur, like you got to have tax setback and you do have to have a website. You have to have some other just things that just cost money. And again, Mike McAllowitz has a profit first system, which I love. When I found that, it just helped out so much just to make sense. But getting somebody to either help you sit down and figure out your finances for that, what it looks like. I thankfully had a friend of mine that made this really robust spreadsheet of just tracking kind of money in, money out, and kind of broken down, just a simple budgeting thing. So at least you could put stuff in the categories they're in. Again, for me, I don't have hundreds and hundreds of those. It's pretty simple, even if I have 4 or 5 people that work with me. But just to understand, oh, look, okay, how much money am I going to make 3 months from now? I should pay attention to that. Versus like, sweet, I got a deal. Okay. Yeah. But realizing I gotta get like 9 more of those there. Yeah. That kind of stuff. And so definitely the money part of it.
Yeah.
To get a better grasp of that or start learning that stuff, start educating myself on that when I started that, as opposed to, for me, it was a couple of years of like, I was kind of tracking it, but it wasn't nearly as good as it could have been or should it was always kind of funky.
Yeah, I've got you brought up Profit First, the book Profit First, and for those that haven't read it, I'd recommend it. But here's my funny story. So I read the book and decided, okay, I'm going to try this, and I went to a buddy of mine and set up a checking account in a completely different bank. And I did not tell my wife about it. It wasn't like I was trying to hide anything. I just went and set it up. And so as the profit would come in, well, they did something with their system, and I was getting all of my bank statements electronic. Well, one month it came in as a hard copy.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, there is $19,000 in this account. And so now all of a sudden I'm interrogated because she's thinking I'm hiding money from her.
Right.
She's like, what? Well, yeah. And it just, so anybody that reads the book, if you're going to do that, be very transparent with your spouse and let them know what's going on. Don't let them see you. But
why do you have 5 bank accounts? And why is this one at another bank? Right. Yeah.
What is this? You never told me about that. I said, well, it's for business. It's got my business name on it. So so be careful. There's traps.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Well, this has been great. I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope that by us having this discussion that there's others that can learn on how to be a better entrepreneur. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. I appreciate it too, man.
For those that want to know how to find you, if they're interested in talking to you, how do they find you?
Yeah. The simplest thing is to go to my website. It's clarityalwayswins.com. Clarityalwayswins.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. I hang out there a lot, converse and post and interact there too. So if somebody's on LinkedIn, you can find me, Brad Alexander, and look for one in Arkansas that has some story brand stuff around it. You should be able to find me there. But yeah, that's probably the simplest way. People feel free to email me too. If you've got questions, I hop on calls with people all the time. Very much a no sales call, no pressure. Hey, we're trying to figure stuff out. I'm very, very much aware that in the marketing world, there's so many people who just want to get on a call with you that magically their service is the answer to your prayers. And I hate that, and it makes me mad. And we don't really have an approach like that. So I'll gladly tell people, help them think through a few things, and they're like, yeah, we could help you with this, or no, but you should probably talk to my friend over here. He's great at those things. Or, you know, I'm very much an honest conversation. And then sometimes people are like, I just don't know. And there's a two things like to do without paying anybody. And it's like, oh, all right, that helps. And so anyway, you can schedule calls with me on my website, again, clarityalwayswins.com. There's a button to do that. I'm happy to jump on a Zoom call with anybody else. And yeah, I appreciate it.
Great. Well, good luck with everything, and we will talk soon.